This case illustrates the silent rage and anger of the family members towards a mental despot. So at the end, I summarized some of your suggestions that it is possible to work with the 3 R's, especially that it is necessary for the victims of mental despotism to first recognize what is going on and what the meaning is of their behavior. For instance, in this case, the woman who is burying herself in the books and is following an intellectual pursuit. The meaning of that escape, so that she will be aware, and the boy who is slouching and non-communicative, that the first step is to become aware of the meaning of such behavior. Then you emphasize that it is not necessary for the family members to react in an angry or hostile way, because then we would have mental despotism and counter mental despotism, and that way that is not a solution. So then finally I mentioned that the solution is recognizing, becoming aware, regretting that we have allowed ourselves to be unaware and to be hypnotized by this mental phenomenon, and finally to turn away from it and to turn our attention to the presence of a mental force which is not personal, which is non-personal, and which you have called omni-action. And this omni-action is constantly present and is favoring harmony and healing and love. And when we become aware of that presence, there is a complete liberation from the need to be angry or even the desire to act angrily. That was in short what we discussed on the previous hour. So we are now prepared to ask further questions about this subject and explore it in greater depth with you. Will anybody who would like to raise a question raise his hand? And then here is Tom ready with a microphone to hand it to you so that we get also the question on tape. And Charles, hand it to Charles, please.
I have a question about the case. As the mother and the son would learn not to react to the father's mental despotism, but we expect this to lead to disruptions in the family as the other members are not reacting the way the father expects them to, and what would be the way that would likely to continue?
Well, who can answer this question? Maybe you can do it for me. Let's ask Charles. Maybe Charles can answer this question. Yes, go ahead, Charles. Get up and answer the question. Okay.
Shall I ask?
See, if a question can be asked, an answer can be found.
Well, it would seem that quite possible that just a whole change in the family system would be taking place from interactive patterns that have lasted for a number of years to a situation where the interaction is diminishing, where there is the image that comes to my mind now is the sound of one hand clapping, that if there is only one individual left to interact, there's really nothing to interact with. But it would seem that perhaps certain adjustments would have to be made the old ways that people would are familiar with. They wouldn't be responding in that way any longer. And I'm sort of wondering what the father would be going through, whether he would whether he would experience enough suffering from that to perhaps seek therapy himself.
So you can expect telephone calls in the future from disgruntled fathers. I would like to, as a wonderful opportunity, to point out that the 3 R's are not a secret strategy for psychological warfare. You could apply it in the spirit of psychological warfare. I will pull this meta-psychiatry trick on this despotic parent, and then he will be driven crazy. It reminds me of how St. Paul had a certain fantasy that if you love your enemy, you will be heaping coals of fire on his head. But that's not what the 3 R's are all about. The 3 R's are a healing approach. And what makes it different between psychological warfare from a healing approach?
Well, it is not interpersonal.
That's true, but beyond that. What?
What I found reorientation is not my job. I could recognize it and regret it,
Yes.
but seems like the reorientation comes not from the self, it doesn't come from the self.
It's still your job. It's not a job, it's a response. But the important, yes, John, you're getting ready to say something.
Could it be that in the case of using it as a psychological tool, your expectation is that the other would change, and in the case of using it from a spiritual perspective, it's your own redemption or your own saving from the idea that you're after?
Certainly, this is a valid point, but beyond that.
You can tell right away when you missed.
Let me torture you a little. Yes, Roberta.
Think that when you don't start out with preconceived ideas, you're allowing God to do the healing rather than the therapist.
When you don't start out with
preconceived ideas. Where you're
like
saying,
what, for instance?
you just said to direct the patient in a particular way. Isn't that should thinking?
Oh, of course you could have all kinds of thinking involved, but it will always be a psychological warfare unless one important point is being missed until now. Claudette, is that you there? Yes? Stand up, you're good looking, everybody.
The reorientation is what is real,
Yes.
and the other is a fantasy, so not real. So you're reorientating yourself to something that is reality, so that there is healing.
Oh, it could still be psychological warfare. Yes.
And so you guys wanting to change the person or not wanting a situation?
Yeah, that's certainly psychological warfare. If you want it or if you don't want it. In either case, you're engaged in psychological warfare, which is another form of mental despotism. Can mental despotism be healed by counter-despotism? No. Okay, affirm.
Is the difference that in the psychological warfare you're thinking that there's self and other and that the issue is outside of consciousness?
Well, it's not clear what you really mean.
Well, if I'm using reorientation and regret and recognition in order to change those around me, I still have a mistaken belief that the despotism is out there affecting me in a cause and effect. But if I'm recognizing, then I'm recognizing the issue in consciousness, which is needing to be healed. It is ignorant of the truth.
Yes.
Is that the difference between?
Well, you're getting close, but you're not there yet.
Okay.
Michael? No.
Shall I venture?
Okay. Now watch out, there is a bamboo pole.
The thought that came is that in psychological warfare, one assumes one is either here for others or here for oneself. And the healing response is dawning in consciousness that we are here for God.
Yeah, it's pretty good, but you're not there yet.
We've thrown in all the teachings now, so maybe this is something new.
It's nothing. You'll be surprised.
I was thinking that warfare would be thinking that we are fighting something that is real, and the situation is not real. It's just a fantasy.
You know, somebody said that. I think Claudette said the same thing. Were you here? Okay, do you all give up?
We're browbeaten and defiled.
Mental despotism. You see, shall I? Yeah. What is needed is extremely difficult. A non-judgmental view of the despot, neither to condone nor to condemn. That makes all the difference. If you are able to see the despot without condemnation, then the 3 R's will be a healing situation. If there is the slightest secret judging and condemning of the despot, it will not work. It will aggravate the situation. The 3 R's will not work. Nothing will work as long as there is a trace of condemnation.
The forgiveness after giving.
Absolutely, right. Depersonalizing the issue of mental despotism, you see? That is,
So could you explain depersonalizing? Because maybe not everyone is familiar with that.
well, if somebody is mentally despotic, like for instance I am, you cannot blame the person.
This is recognition. It's actually correct, You cannot blame the person.
No. You can blame ignorance. It takes a great deal of ignorance to become a mental despot.
Yes. In other words, mental despotism is are some assumptions about yourself, and that is these assumptions are the culprit.
It's a phenomenon of the idea that it is good to exercise influence over people. And we find this all over the world, and it is even recommended by respectable systems of religion and psychology. that you should be able to influence people with your mind. Yeah?
Now, does this mean that mental despotism is not limited to negative things? Like, for instance, to have somebody comply with the father, that the children do homework the way he wants it. But you mentioned religion, also to want somebody to get well, or somebody wants somebody to be healed, even.
Yes.
Would that be mental despotism?
Mental despotism is always negative, even when it seems to be positive. Remember mother who said, eat the spinach, it's good for you. That's mental despotism. Or practice the piano, right? How much despotism is being in the name of good? The good which I would, that I don't, and the evil which I would not, that I accomplish.
I have a question about the success of the coercion. You can see in the case of a child that in a child's view, they have to go along with what daddy or mommy wants. But how about when we're grown up and live in such an atmosphere? How is it possible that it's we must share some idea? In other words, if I live with a mental despot and I allow myself to be abused in that way, we're sharing some idea, and I was wondering what that idea is.
Well, it's the universal acceptance of this phenomenon, even considering it as inevitable and normal, and biologically justifiable if a man is married and he has certain demands, sexual and otherwise.
You're assuming my despot is a man.
Well, there is an awful lot of it going on. As a matter of fact, it's so prevalent that people don't even realize that it exists.
I would like to go back to your comment about the non-judgmental view and neither condoning or condemning. I think this is the key that I have been looking for years.
Aren't you glad you came?
Oh, I am. Okay, I've been looking at Jesus talking to the Sadducees and Pharisees as an example of how to not judge, but just speak the truth. And I wondered if you could tell me more. My real issue here is how to continue being the beneficial presence. Well, let me just put it real bluntly. I have the ability to see the wholeness. I'm hoping that's not, well, no, to be honest with you. What I see is the potential goodness. And because of this ability to do this, I am not seeing what is. So recently I was aware that I see what really is, that which is real, but I don't see what the person is manifesting. Am I clear about that? Yes, I'm not seeing that they have a problem. Okay. So then in the practical use of this in the world, I am constantly being made aware that I'm not seeing what is going on in the world.
I guess it's your rose-colored glasses.
Exactly. I want so much to see only the good, which is still a judgment.
Right, right. Yes, some people think that if you will just pay attention to the good, then the world will change and correspond to your desire to see only the good. We are not afraid to look at the negative aspects of the phenomenal world. It's important, but we are not impressed by it because we know that it's just ignorance. Jesus could see that the leper is sick. He saw the sickness. He saw the paralytic as paralyzed, but he knew that this is just hypnotism or a manifestation of certain mental belief system. That we are victims of our beliefs which we have received in the process of growing up, etc. And we all suffer from these thoughts which have impinged upon our consciousness, which we have received and accepted and shared. We all suffer from this. We cannot, you see, this is called, if we avoid looking at ugliness and evil, then we are like this movie, what was the name of this little girl who only, Pollyanna. And frequently people suspect that metapsychiatry is a system based on Pollyanna philosophy of life, or that we are just optimistic, or we are just wishful thinkers and fools, and we are kidding ourselves, etc. Not at all. We face up to whatever, all the phenomena of life, but we call it by its real name. It is ignorance with capital I. So we're not afraid to look at evil in the eye. You are nothing, so we face, you are nothing. And the good of God is reality. But have to face up. A despot, an Ayatollah in Iran is a tremendous evil which has completely hypnotized 20 million people into a tremendous system of tyrannical religion. It's a tremendous evil. What we know that this is just ignorance. It's a participation in a tremendous folly. So we don't close our eyes. The good of God is spiritual and real, and the evil is a manifestation of ignorance. Whether it appears on the political arena or in emotional disturbances or warfare of any kind or physical disease or problems, financial problem, any kind, the problem is always lack of understanding of what really is. As the Buddha says, in the realm of the real, there is neither self nor other. There is only that which really is. Now somebody would say, well, so you're not a pessimist, you're not an optimist, maybe you're trying to be realistic. Are we trying to be realistic? You think so? You think so? What is realistic? Right, exactly. We are not realistic. What are we? Real? Not. We are reality-oriented people, or consciousnesses, even better. We are reality-oriented. We seek to know reality.
Maybe you can help me with, I want only to see good, but I don't, like she was saying, I also do not want to miss out. I want to acknowledge that there is evil, or what it is I see dis-ease. And with what I see the dis-ease, whether it's a relationship or a physical problem, I know it doesn't have to be. I know that there's ignorance there. But in the name of compassion, what do I do with that feeling? I get compassion, and then I lose all, my spiritual sight is gone.
Yeah.
I lose
Well,
it.
we do not acknowledge that there is evil. What are we acknowledging?
The
That
illusion.
there seems to be evil. The moment we acknowledge that there is evil, we are honoring it as a reality. So we have to say, we acknowledge and we see that there seems to be evil in the world.
And the experience of evil.
We can experience evil, but experiences are just dreams. Did you know that? At night we dream in pictures. Everybody knows that, right? During the day we dream in experiences.
I still am not sure. Is my compassion, when I feel the compassion, have I lost it? Have I now bought into the idea of duality? Is
Well,
compassion a...
Well, you have to read a little booklet over that. It's entitled Compassion. It's a complex issue, compassion. It's easy to say, I have compassion, I want to have compassion, I want to be compassionate. But compassion is a very high level of spiritual consciousness, and we can seek to reach that. But most of the time when we speak of compassion, it's just having sympathy or empathy or pity for someone. It's not really compassion.
Compassion is defined there as non-judgmental awareness. That's exactly what you mentioned is needed. Elizabeth, go ahead.
In the book on compassion, I noticed it said that it's dangerous to pretend to be compassionate.
Right.
And I would like to know, how would one know that one was pretending, and how would you be healed of that?
Well, what is the danger in pretending to be compassionate?
Would it be repressing anger?
Certainly that can be part of it. But if we pretend to be compassionate, we will never become compassionate. So in connection with compassion, the problem of compassion, we have come up recently with a koan. You know what a koan is? If you immerse yourself into that koan, something fantastic could happen to you. Would you like something
Yes.
fantastic? The koan is this. Understanding understands the lack of understanding. And that's compassion.
Thank you. I'll work with that.
Good. Eddie.
I don't know if I heard this correctly in the case presentation, but I thought I heard that the therapist had identified the mother and the son as the victims of a mental despot who was the oppressive husband. Isn't it kind of dangerous to identify them as victims because it may lead to some kind of self-confirmatory idea about themselves? And also, doesn't this lead to a little bit, if the clients are not real ready for compassion, doesn't that lead to some form of blame, blaming the husband as an oppressive individual?
Inevitably so, but you cannot avoid it until the individual has come to understand more about the 3 R's. It is necessary for that individual to see that indeed, up till now, they had the experience of victimization without admitting it to themselves.
Okay.
So,
The experience of victimization.
Yes, right,
being
right.
a victim.
yes.
Thank you.
Oh, it just came to mind, Dr. Hora, that in many human systems, both religious and psychological, there is a desire or an attempt to skip over some of the problems of life. For example, the asceticism way is we'll get rid of bodily desires or focus by repressing it or pretending it isn't there or making it go away. Or in this case, sometimes people hear metapsychiatry as saying, well, the concern is we don't blame, so we'll jump right to spiritual seeing. But that as you just explained it, metapsychiatry enables us to look squarely in the eye at any and every mental issue, every false desire, every aspect of the human scene. And by doing that, by being able to look directly at it and identify it with clarity, we actually transcend it. We never have to just sort of try to get it to the...
Do we all hear that? Yes. Some thoughts we don't want to know about. They are too painful, and then we repress it. And some thoughts we can face up to, but we don't want other people to know that we have those thoughts. And that's suppressing it.
I would like to see more clearly the connection between low self-esteem and living in a coercive atmosphere. That connection was made in the paper, and I still didn't see it very clearly.
Yes. Well, if we have low self-esteem, then we accept a great deal of abuse, because we don't know that it's not legitimate.
How about then the other way around? I can't make it come out any way but cause and effect. But living in a coercive atmosphere also manifests in low self-esteem. See, that's a sneaky way of saying causes low self-esteem.
Yeah, well, as you know, Joan, there is such a principle which says nothing comes into experience uninvited. And what instead of a vicious circle, if we have low self-esteem, the thoughts about ourselves invite abuse, right? Having received abuse, we try to cope with it either through repression or suppression, or trying to escape into a nice novel or something, or go to the movies or something like that.
Or any number of
A
them.
number of ways of trying to cope with it. So it is connected. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a difference between anger and resentment?
What did you ask?
Is there a difference between anger and resentment?
And resentment. Well, we could say that anger tends to be immediate. It's an angry reaction. Resentment tends to be chronic. Some people complain of chronic headaches or chronic physical symptoms, like asthma, for instance, or other things. So that more issue is resentment. The word resentment indicates a repetition of sentiment, re-sentiment, repeating a certain sentiment. So that's chronic.
When they did that case discussion, I recognized, I'm sure as other people did, my family as a child, and I had a father who was clearly a mental despot, and I've always had this sort of lingering resentment that my mother didn't stick up for us.
Yeah.
And she's so nice. And, I could see that when she was under the influence of this despotic husband, but what would be helpful in healing resenting a nice mother?
You would like to be healed of resenting it. It's very simple. Who can help? She's already on the way. No, you don't blame her. You stop, give up blaming. She was doing her best, trying to cope with. You see, she never studied metapsychiatry. She deserves a medal. Yes?
Go ahead.
Could you introduce yourself? Eric Dahl, nice to meet you, Eric.
You have said enough that nothing comes into experience uninvited. And if, in fact, that's the case, and if ignorance is the source of these manifold problems that we have, somehow, following that principle, we have invited ignorance.
But we have to?
We have invited ignorance.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could explain or comment on the etiology of ignorance.
Yeah, that's very simple, Eric. Who can help Eric understand? What is the source of ignorance?
Not knowing
Not knowing truth?
Yes.
Right, exactly. Judging by appearances. Jesus said, judge not by appearances, but judge righteous judgment. What did he mean? Eric, can you tell?
Judge not by appearances, but judge
Righteous judgment.
Well, I would have to say that that means, you know, the world presents to us an image,
Yes.
which, in my own way of thinking, I would say is as if an overlay or a perception based on a lack of recognition of what I would call the divine or ultimate reality of the self. And a righteous judgment is the judgment which in some sense comes out of the self and beholds the self, beholds that universal aspect of life. Love intelligence, sort of love intelligence recognizing itself.
Miss Pinkblouse, you had an answer.
Heck, you can.
I'm going to say that right judgment is compassion again. It's a non-judgmental reflection of the other person, of the reality.
Well, you could use the issue of compassion as a universal panacea to everything, but that would make us into wishful thinkers again. We have to know exactly what is meant by righteous judgment in contradistinction to judging by appearances. Yeah, who is that? Georgiana.
I would like to understand more our habitual ways of thinking, because you brought that up in the paper and it's been brought to my attention. And what occurred to me is, are our modes of being actually habitual, our habitual ways of thinking that are really not apparent to us? To others, perhaps, but not necessarily to us.
Are you responding to the issue?
No.
No, you
No,
are
yeah.
introducing a
Right.
marginal issue. Let's first find the answer to
Okay.
the issue and then we
Okay,
can.
fine.
Okay. So what is meant by righteous judgment?
Would it be the perfection of creation, God? Righteous judgment?
The profession of creation?
Perfection.
Perfection. Well, that is true, but righteous judgment in juxtaposition to judging by appearances. Charles?
I guess it would be the ability to discern truth from error.
Yes, that is correct. But how do we know what is true and how do we know what ain't?
Well, we have our principle of existential validation.
That's correct. You see? That, yes?
And you have something to add?
I can't talk. Yeah. There's no use trying. Yeah. Righteous judgment is judging in terms of what is right. That which is existentially valid is true and is correct and is right. And judging by appearances is never true, is never correct, is never right, is always mistaken. So,
And what is existential validation?
what do we call existentially valid? Right? That's your question. What is existentially valid? Spiritual values, spiritual qualities, spiritual ideas are existentially valid because they validate themselves in terms of healing and harmony and peace and assurance and gratitude and love, right? So this is existential validation. It's life enhancing. Got it? You got it?
You raise your hand.
Georgiana, we can.
Yes, now let's come back to Georgiana. Could you refresh our memory?
Yeah, my question had to do with our habitual ways of thinking. And what I was wondering if our modes of being represent our habitual ways of thinking, which are often not clear to us, but perhaps clear to others.
Yes, Georgiana, it's the other way around. Our habitual ways of thinking determine our modes of being in the world.
Then what is the most helpful way to uncover these? Since it's a habit, and I've perhaps been thinking these for a long time, what would be the best way to uncover that?
The most helpful way that we know of is by studying metapsychiatry.
I'm in the right place.
You see, Georgiana, a metapsychiatrist is not a therapist, he's not a psychologist, and he's not a religious preacher. We don't see psychiatrists and therapists treat sicknesses. Psychologists treat people. We don't do these things. What do we do? Nothing.
Perfect job.
We treat modes of being in the world. Yeah? By discovering the thought systems, the belief systems, which determine an individual's mode of being in the world, and we help him see the invalidity or the validity of those particular thoughts, and by contrast to existentially valid thoughts, values, and qualities, a healing takes place. We don't do that. It takes place.
Is there a way for us to become aware of our own mode of being in the world? Because it is possible to go to somebody who could help us discern it. But is it possible for ourselves to discern our mode of being in the world?
Yes.
And what is that?
Yes. Every time somebody punches you in the nose, things you're reminded, and it may be your mode of being in this world. But beyond these unpleasant experiences, meditation is very helpful, because in the course of meditation, all our invalid thoughts tend to obtrude themselves. In meditation, we endeavor to pay attention to what God wants. And our habitual ways of thinking intrude and interfere, and we become aware of it. And there is a warfare going on in consciousness between valid and invalid thoughts.
So if we watch them, in meditation, these thoughts present themselves.
Yes.
In a certain...
Or in dreams too, of course. Yes, Michael.
Yeah.
What is the meaning of obsessive ruminations of accountability?
Obsessive ruminations of accountability.
Yes. Accountability? Right.
Accountability.
What was accountability?
Yeah, being blameworthy, responsible, or something like that. Accountable for all sorts of things, yes? Would you really want to know?
I don't know, but
Well, let's say that you have observed this in somebody.
Right.
Can anybody tell? Obsessive rumination of accountability. Nobody ventures a guess. Certainly. Not any specific kind of self-importance. Sheila. Yes, Dana.
Thinking that we can solve other people's problems or make everything right for them.
Well, it's part of it, sure, Dana. It's simply mental vanity. We have exaggerated expectations from our mental powers.
The good fat woman, that.
Ruth?
No, good fat.
A good head on your shoulder. Yes.
Mental vanity.
Mental vanity is very widespread in the world, because we are going to school for years and years to learn how to be mentally vain. We cultivate our personal minds, and we are learning in school how to use your head, right? And you use your head to learn geography and history and mathematics. And then you have exaggerated expectations of your own mental abilities. And then you may become a minister of And if it doesn't work, you're hitting yourself over the head. I'm not smart enough to pull this off. Somebody? Yes.
Dr. Hora, you mentioned that we seek spiritual guidance in metapsychiatry so that our mode of being can be revealed to us.
Yes.
And then Georgiana asked whether, if it's possible, or someone asked whether it's possible for us to see our own mode of being revealing itself in meditation or whatever.
Yes.
Is it correct that at some point our mode of being is completely revealed to us, and we do see clearly the error continually until it no longer has any power over us. That it has to be pointed out for a long time, but eventually we see completely the invalid mode of being and see ourselves in the divine context, in contrast to it. Is that correct?
You doubt the possibility?
But I wanted to know if that...
You would like a little reassurance?
Right.
Rest assured that it is possible. With men, this is not possible. But with women, yes.
In our house, we have a little joke where Bill says men are working with a whole brain and women are working with a half a brain. And I said, you can stay up all night with your whole brain working away while I sleep peacefully with a half, because I have to get rid of the whole thing anyway.
But first, how can you get rid of what you ain't got?
Yes.
How can we be healed of mental vanity? Wouldn't you like to ask this question? Eddie, did you want to answer?
I don't know the answer.
You know?
But I would like to know that.
You would. Good. Anybody else would like to know that?
Sure, I'd like to.
Yes? And would you venture a saying? A pediatric response.
Well, I immediately thought of your famous old Texas saying, I ain't never was nobody. It would seem that, as you just pointed out to Fern, that as long as we think we have a mind, we're responsible for it, we want to shape it up real good. But the discovery that there's only one mind and it ain't ours is the...
How could we discover that?
By studying medicine. That's how I discovered it.
Charlotte?
Well, you pointed out that the meaning of vanity is the desire to be admired. And it seems that once we call it by what it really is, it really doesn't seem quite as attractive any longer.
That's true. In what way will that facilitate the process of losing our minds?
Well, it seems to be quite embarrassing to admit that one has a desire to be admired.
That's true. Very good. Especially for one's mental perspicacity. Now, what else is there in life than mental perspicacity?
A perspicacity is a keen discernment. And it seems that a keen discernment is something good to have.
Keen discernment?
Perspicacity.
Yeah. Well, there is perspicacity and perspicacity. There are thinkers and there are responsive individuals who are not doing the perspicacity, it just bubbles out of them through inspired wisdom. So we have to learn to be sort of mouthpieces of of the flow of ideas from the divine mind, and never to talk in a premeditated way. See, the very thing that our culture values highly, don't talk before you are thinking. Think it over carefully what you're going to say. Then you will use your own illusory mind. But you can learn to hear ideas obtaining spontaneously in consciousness. And then God is inspiring and providing the ideas. And that's a great liberation. You don't take credit for what you know, and you don't have to rack your brain to say something valid. It's just there. It's marvelous. Now Eddie was waiting with a question. No?
Are we finished that topic?
Do you have a related question?
Yes?
Yes, give her the microphone.
What you're talking about I've had happen in my life, but I don't understand how to cultivate it, where it just comes out and I go, oh, where did that come
In
from?
meditation, you can cultivate it.
Just with meditation.
Because we are listening for ideas obtaining in consciousness. We are not thinking. In meditation, we are not thinking. We are observing thoughts passing by.
Doesn't it not, or maybe it's just me, but does it not always seem that what you're talking about comes after I meditate, like 20 minutes or an hour or the 3 days later, it just comes. Nothing comes when I meditate. That
Well,
I can move on to.
hopefully it will come sooner.
Soon.
Yeah.
I'll be patient.
The French call it l'esprit de l'escalier.
Could you explain that, Jan?
Well, it's a phenomenon, but you suddenly think of things that you could have said while leaving a situation. But that is, of course, the opposite of premeditation.
It's post-meditation.
It's not spontaneous either.
No.
Who has the microphone? Adi, go ahead.
A phrase I've heard among other spiritual circles that I've been wanting to check out is that anger is a call for love, and is there a truth in that? And if so, how is anger a call for love?
Only Charles can explain this. I don't know. I don't understand this. Okay, Charles, you have explained it to me many times. I still don't understand.
Anger is a situation indicating the need for compassion.
Is that all?
I was trying to keep it simple.
This is too simple for us. Now, some people get very angry if they are not loved. Is that what you mean?
No, because that's putting it in the context of interpersonal relationships.
Yes.
But anger is a situation indicating ignorance, and rather than blame, what we tend to do, if someone is angry at us, they're attacking us, we get angry back and blame. What's required is to separate the anger from the individual, to depersonalize it, which is what you describe in the book on compassion. And that actually is responding in a loving way. And in that sense, you could see that angry situation as a call for love.
Eddie, does this satisfy you, this answer?
Not very clearly. I'm thinking of your definition of love as paying attention to understand.
And I was trying to see if I could apply that. If love is paying attention to understand, then when we experience or see anger, is that calling for our need to understand what really is? Is that pointing out an error that we need to see in order to understand what really is?
Well, the way I understand it is if somebody, it only applies to somebody who is angry at us, rather than see it as an attack, to see it as a call for love, to see somebody who is in the a victim of ignorance and who is calling out to see the Christ in him. Is that correct, Charles?
Yeah, very good.
I still don't understand.
Hopeless.
What is the meaning of not understanding that?
Big question.
You're playing stupid, that's all.
Is there any last question before we
Concluding question.
Anyone who has a concluding question? Last chance to get enlightened. All right, Fern?
I just wanted to express our appreciation from all the students here in California for your presence at the seminar, Dr. Hora, and throughout the conference.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.